All right, so again, for the last set of problems, we are still solving by factoring. So 25, it's equal to 0. I don't have a greatest common factor, and I have two terms with a cube, and both 27, x cubed, and 1 are perfect cubes. So that means that we are factoring it into the pattern a plus b times a squared minus a times b plus b squared. So our a is the cubed root of 27x cubed. So that is going to be 3x. Cubed root of 1 is 1. So that is our b value. Okay. So that means that this will factor into 3x plus 1. Again, a squared, so we're squaring the quantity of 3x. So that'll become a 9x squared minus 3x times 1, so 3x. And then plus 1 squared, which is 1. So again, this one is prime, so we can't factor it any further, so we're setting each group equal to 0 and solving. So from this one, we're going to subtract the 1 and then divide by 3. So our first answer is negative 1/3. And then here we have to solve by quadratic formula. So x equals 3 plus and minus the square root of b squared, so 9 minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. And then we just simplify that as much as we can. So if we start in the radical, we are doing 9 minus 36, so that is negative 27. And then the square root of 27, we would split as 9 and 3. So it'll be 3i squared of 3 over 18. And then these three numbers are all divisible by 3. So our last set of answers will be 1 plus and minus I squared of 3 over 6. So here are the final answers. All right, the next one, 26. So no greatest common factor. It's already equal to 0. We're missing the cubic and the linear term. And our highest is a quartic. So if this is going to factor, we're going to factor it just like a quadratic. Okay? So the only way to split 3 is going to be 3 and 1. And then we need one of each sign because we have a negative for the middle term and we need two negative signs because we have a positive for the last term, negative for the middle term. So both of these have to be negative. And then now for the 4x to the fourth, we have to decide if we want to use 2x and 2x or to use 4x and 1x. So again, it just kind of depends on the situation. So I'm going to start with 4x squared and 1x squared. And hopefully I put them in the right spots. If I didn't, then I just have to go back and change it. So again, we would take the middle and then the outside and multiply this together. So 4x squared times a negative 1 is going to be negative 4x squared. Negative 3 times x squared is negative 3x squared. And if I add this, it has to be that middle term. So if I look at this, well, this does not equal our middle term. So that means that I put my factors in the wrong spot. So this is not the correct factored form. So now I'm just going to have to go back and try again. Okay. So I'm going to use a different color so you guys can see that. Okay. So let's just maybe try flipping the order. So let's try x squared minus 3 times 4x squared minus 1. Okay. So again, just to make sure that I multiplied, this would give me a negative 12x squared from the middle terms. And then from the outside, that is going to be a minus x squared. So again, negative 13x squared. So still did not pick the right set of factors because I did not get negative 8. So again, I have to go back and refactor. So this becomes very important that you are checking to make sure that you're factoring correctly. All right, so one more time. So this means that I have to split it as 2x and 2x if it's going to work. So 2x squared minus 3, and then 2x squared minus 1. So again, just to make sure, 2x squared times 2x squared, outside, 2x squared times negative 1 is a negative 2x squared. And then the middle ones is a negative 6x squared. So now, again, if I add, I'm getting that middle term. So that's how I know that this is the correct factored form. And I don't have the difference of squares. So now I'm just ready to set them both equal to 0 and finish solving the problem. So for this one, if we do that, we would add the 3 and then divide by 2, and then I would have to take the square root of each side. For the second one, again, I'm going to add the 1. And then divide by 2, so it's going to be a 1/2. And then I have to take the square root of each side. So my final answers for this problem is going to be x equals plus and minus the square root of 3/2, and then comma, plus and minus the square root of 1/2. And for right now, because we don't know simplifying rules for radicals, we're going to leave our answers like that. Okay? In the next chapter, when we talk about simplifying radicals, that will not be an acceptable simplified answer. So just be aware of that. All right, last problem. All right, so again, looking at this one does have a greatest common factor. So I can factor out an x to start with, and then I will have x to the 4th minus 16. So now looking at this one, this is actually the difference of squares. So when I split this, I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to be negative 16, add to be 0, since we don't have that middle term. And then that x is just going to follow. So we have to split the middle as x squared and x squared. And then two numbers that multiply to be negative 16 are going to be a positive 4 and a negative 4. And I can keep factoring this last term. So again, the first two are going to stay the same. And then two numbers that multiply to be 4 add to be 0 are going to be x plus 2 and x minus 2. So now I'm just going to set each group equal to 0 and solve. So first one, I can't do anything else to solve that, so one of my answers is just 0. This one, we would subtract the 4, and then we have to take the square root of each side. So that is going to give us plus and minus 2i, since we took the square root of a negative. This one, we're subtracting the 2, so it's a negative 2. And the last one, we are adding the 2, so it is a positive 2. So here are the final 5 answers. And that is also going to conclude section 5.